Roll bonus, minus 95% large laser power requirement, minus 50% large laser capacity unit. Advanced large laser operation bonus will give you plus 6% large laser damage, minus 10% large laser capacity unit. Advanced Battlecruiser command bonus will give you minus 5% inertia modifier and plus 5% scan resolution. Overall pretty solid. I like the lower laser capacity unit. 2 drones, 7 high slots, 3 medium slots, 6 low slots, 3 combat and 3 engineering rigs, 40,000 overall defense. The Oracle 3 is a armor tank. The capacitor is really good, 4798 gigajoules, recharge time 576 seconds, recharge rate 20.82 gigajoule per second, which is a really solid recharge rate. It can lock 7 targets, the signature radius, resolution and strength is really good as well. The Oracle 3 is definitely not the fastest, although it's also not slow. It's a moderately quick little boat. Alright, and now let's take a look at the build that I have on this ship. 1327.89 DPS. Currently I have the beam lasers. They have a very good range, 77.82 km, accuracy of 25.94, tracking 2.8. In the medium slots, 1 scrambler, 1 web, 1 target painter, dual drones. In the low slots, 1 large MVD, a damage control, medium capacitor battery, a heatsink and dual tracking computers. This is a very similar build to the build that I had on the Tornado. Overall it can be applied to most of the assault battlecruisers. 2 burst aerators and 1 collision accelerator. In the engineering rigs I have 1 powered router, 1 integration engineering rig that has a ancillary powered router and a capacitor control circuit, and there is 1 polycarbon engine housing for the large afterburner or large micro warp drive. Now the nanocore, well, as I usually pick when I try out a new ship, I like to make the ship look pretty, and this is basically the reason why I have this nanocore installed. This is the Illusionary Ghost core, and I have to admit this ship is very pretty with this nanocore, and definitely one of the prettiest ships in the game and one of the most unique looking battlecruisers in the game. The Oracle is a very, very pretty ship. I am a fan of its design. Now you have a lot of nanocore options for this little boat, and doesn't matter which nanocore you pick, it will work really well. You can focus on armor or damage on most of the nanocores. Even inertia modifier, flight velocity is also important. Basically there is a nanocore for all types of builds that you want to go for, and again in the end it doesn't really matter which one you take. The nanocores are all pretty similar and they all will give about the same stat, plus minus 1%. Of course some nanocores will be better for speed, some for the DPS, some for inertia and things like that, but in the end you pick the nanocore that you need or the nanocore that you like. In my case I picked the nanocore based on the looks. I like my ships to be pretty. Now for the implants you have 2 options, focus crystal and pulse crystal. Now the focus crystal is for PvE and for long range, long duration PvP. For the general units you can go with a micro warp drive unit for output boost or efficiency. You can go for heat sinks. In my case, because this is a sniper ship and overall most of these ships are snipers, the heatsink unit is the way to go. Basically it will improve the DPS output and it can also improve the duration of the heatsink module being active, so that's what I would do on a focus crystal Oracle 3 sniper. You can also go with a build like this. Basically you can enhance the range of the tracking computer to make it even a better sniper than it was. And now I have 91.7 km optimum range, 30.50% average fall off, and tracking is 2.38. So I sacrificed a little bit of tracking from 2.8 to 2.35, 36, but I gained extra 20 km range, and honestly a pretty good trade-off. And now let me show you the maximum speed. Now the maneuverability with 1 polycarbon engine housing is not bad. It's actually quite a maneuverable little boat. It's also fast. It's very difficult to catch a battlecruiser that uses a large propulsion module, 2.8 km per second, which is honestly not slow at all. You get apocalypse striker level of alpha hits with the large beam lasers. and you get cruiser level of speed. In a straight line, this thing will be very difficult to catch, and of course, you can make the ship even faster with a different rig layout. Again, you can add the rigs that you need if you like extra speed. Auxiliary thrusters and the engine housing rigs are the way to go, and the nanocore for extra speed boost, of course. But in my case, since speed is not really that bad, I'm quite happy with the current result. I will keep the nanocore for DPS, and it does react really well on manual inputs. Does turn on fast, does speed up fast. Of course, not as fast as the Trollnado, but it's still a really solid speed boost. And now let's take a look at the maximum possible DPS output, 3114.68, and with the second heatsink the DPS is 4.7,000, almost 4.8, which is not bad for a sniper and definitely not bad for a battlecruiser. Alright, well, let's dock and let me show you the maximum range. 154 km with one computer, and with the second one 209 km is the optimal, accuracy value of 69.64, tracking 2.38. A very good range. Can be used for sniping pirates that end up warping to your mission in low sec, for example. Alright, well, I think I'll switch to the pulse crystal to show you the DPS with the pulse crystal with this current build. The range will be the same because I'm not going to be changing the training computers, and over here I think I have the same units. I'll just quickly add the units that I used from the focus crystal. I think this should work. Actually, nope. I forgot to add one. Let me quickly scroll down.
Docking
Range correction.
accepted.
Okay, now it's there. Let's undock and let's take a look at no, the DPS with the pulse crystal will be a little bit higher because the pulse crystal does actually improve the passive DPS a little bit, but it does give you a constant 75% damage boost once activated. However, with the pulse crystal you really want to focus on capacitor rigs and capacitor batteries because the pulse crystal does increase the capacitor usage, and in order to counter that you have to have a very good capacitor, so multiple capacitor batteries with a pulse crystal build is the way to go. 3105.79 DPS, and with the heatsink active it's 3761.95 DPS. Not bad, really not bad. That's a instant boost in DPS that you get, no charge needed. You just click on the implant and you get that DPS. As long as your capacitor is in a high level, it will also have a high DPS output. You can do a build like this: triple heatsinks, one direct computer, and a capacitor battery. Now it's 2125 DPS. Let's undock and let me show you the current DPS with this current build. It will have short range, but it will have much higher damage output, and I do like that for high sec. For high sec you don't really need a lot of tank. Basically at 70-80 kilometers the pirate ships will not be able to hit you and you should be safe, so a build like this can work. Or it can also work in a fleet in low sec for PvP, a multi-purpose build that has multiple applications in a lot of different scenarios. 3758.04 DPS, which again is pretty good. With one heatsink, the DPS is 4433.96. With the second heatsink, the DPS is 5217.13, and with the last heatsink, the DPS is 5758.84. 78.8 kilometers, 26.03 kilometer is the accuracy fall-off, and once the training computer is active, 141 kilometer range, which honestly is good for sniping. Alright, well, let's dock and let me swap the implant once more to show you the maximum DPS output on the focus crystal. I believe that's the next one that I have to show you. The focus crystal will have higher DPS, but it has been nerfed, as you noticed by the lower stacks. Now it's 144, it used to be 180. So the focus crystal has been nerfed. It will be nerfed even more in the future, so keep that in mind. That will happen. but it still has a very good DPS output, and even if they nerf it for, I don't know, 50%, it will still have a very good damage
Docking
output.
request
So
accepted.
let's unlock with the focus crystal and let's see the maximum possible DPS output with this build. Okay, let's do that. Definitely not going to orbit because it's not going to do well, it's not going to track, so it's probably the best option to stop in place because these are the beam lasers. They have lower tracking and pulse lasers. And now once the implant is charged up, 4614.67 DPS with one heatsink. The DPS is 5652.60, and with the second one 6.7 thousand. With the third one it's 7485.90 DPS, which is really nice. And with the tracking computer, the range will be 141 km and accuracy of 46.93. Pretty satisfied and pretty happy with the current result. Okay, let's dock and let me show you a different build. Now, this build has a large capacitor battery and a medium micro drive, just in case if you can't fit a large micro drive, you can also use a large afterburner and a medium capacitor battery. Although with this build I recommend dual polycarbon engine housings just to be able to maneuver. And now time to use the pulse lasers. Now the pulse lasers have much higher alpha, much higher DPS, shorter range and better tracking. So optimal 40 kilometers, average of 8 kilometers, triple heatsinks, one tracking computer, one medium capacitor battery and a large afterburner. You can also use a large micro drive or a medium afterburner or a medium micro drive. Basically all these modules can be the way to go, and if you're using a medium micro drive or afterburner, you can go with a large capacitor battery just to take advantage of that massive power that you have on this boat. And now let's undock and let me show you the maximum DPS with this build and the speeds with the afterburner. Now the assault battlecruisers are basically kind of meant to be used with the larger micro drive or afterburner, but you can also use them with the medium one. After all, it works both ways. Okay, 3.8 thousand DPS. The capacitor is stable now, which is very nice and very good to see. The afterburner speed is 538.01 meters per second, which is okay for a battlecruiser. The range on the pulse lasers is 73.91 and 14.64.67. My apologies. And now, when fully charged, 5.7 thousand DPS with one heatsink. The DPS is 7,024.91. With the second one, it's 8,353.85, and with the last one, it should be over 9,000. 9,009.30. Very nice. It does approach Apocalypse Striker level of DPS, and I'm very happy that that's the case. Okay, let's dock, and I have a couple more builds to show you. Now you can basically go with triple tracking computers to enhance the range of the tracking computers to the maximum. One heatsink, one capacitor battery and one afterburn. And I do like the current setup. You can also use a large micro drive with this build. It does eat up all the power grid though, so that's very nice. I like to see the power grid being used. And now the PvP builds. Now this build is basically what I run on most of my battleships. Basically quad damage mods, damage control and a micro warp drive. It has crazy DPS, but basically the only tank is the damage control. Excellent for hit and run operations, excellent for low sec, and excellent when you are landing on top of the target. Now the focus crystal is not really the best option with this kind of build because most targets will either warp away or be long dead before you have your full DPS output. 22,000 hit points with the damage roll, which is very solid. The ship has a lot of armor, so we have a nice buffer tank. And now, just to show the maximum possible DPS output, 4.7 thousand when fully charged. With one heatsink, it's 5.8 thousand. With the second heatsink, it's 6.9 thousand, almost 7 thousand. With the third heatsink, 7.7 thousand. And with the last heatsink, the DPS is 8.1 thousand, which honestly is very nice. Although that DPS will, in most cases, never be reached in actual combat, because most targets will be long dead before you reach that DPS, or they will warp away. Or you will miss the target, because in PvP, misses happen quite often, and you might lose your stacks. So that's why the focus crystal is not really good for that type of PvP. But there is the pulse crystal, and the pulse crystal is the one that I actually prefer to use, and I would actually use in PvP, because it gives you a instant damage boost of 75%, and the capacitor is not really a problem, because you will probably destroy the target before your capacitor is low, and basically very quick warp in, very quick kill, and a very quick warp out. That's how we usually run, and that's one of the best tactics to date that you can use in PvP for this game at the moment. But will that be changed in the future? Well, could be. Very high chance that April does change a lot of things, but we will see what will happen. 4.6 thousand DPS with the quad heatsink, just making sure that I didn't install a gyro stabilizer by accident, because it can happen. And now, when the heatsinks are enabled, 5.6 thousand with one heatsink, 6.6 thousand with the second one. With the third one, it's 7.3 thousand, and with the last one, it's 7.6 thousand, 7,342.96 DPS. Really solid, and that's why I prefer the pulse crystal over the focus crystal for PvP, because that instant damage boost is extremely useful in combat. Now you can also do a build like this with a large armor plate and a damage roll. This gives you a lot of buffer tank. You can combine the armor plate and the damage roll. Then you can also do a adaptive armor hardener, and a damage roll also gives you a very nice resistance. You can combine the armor plate and the adaptive and the damage roll to enhance the tank even more. You still have very solid DPS, and you can do dual adaptive and one damage roll. This will give you the best resistance, and you will also maintain a very good DPS output. Basically a passive armor tank you will have to repair after you take armor damage, because armor doesn't passively regenerate. Although in the future, perhaps when we get Nanite passed, you will be able to repair your ship using that in the cargo hold. So a build like this is future proof, because in future we might get modules or items that can repair your ship just from using them in the cargo hold, like in EVE Online. And just to show you the resistance on this ship, with dual adaptives enabled, 103,000 hit points, not bad, really solid stats, pretty tanky for a DPS build. And with the damage roll, for 13 seconds you will have 307,000 hit points, 92, 90, 88 and 87% resistance. Again, really solid for a Battlecruiser that's focused on DPS. For a hit and run, it's going to do an amazing job, and for low sec PvP or in a fleet, it's going to work really, really well. Now for PvE, I would use a build like this, balance between range and DPS. There's a capacitor battery, and I use a large micro warp drive, although you can also use a medium micro warp drive and a large battery. Depends on the implant, depends on your capacitor, and basically depends on your rigs. So you can basically use both combinations, both of them will run really well. And now, let's take this little boat out for a spin, for a ride, and let's see how it works. Now usually, I run the normal missions, because most players run the normal missions with their ships in high sec or low sec. However, since this boat can work and can have about the same DPS, without the siege mode of course, as the Apocalypse Striker, I will throw a more serious mission at this boat, This is one of the low sec missions that are kinda like storyline missions in terms of the waves that you encounter. It has a lot of elites, it has a lot of ships per wave, and the Apocalypse Striker does clear this very quickly. And since this boat has about the same DPS, of course, without counting the siege mode on the Apocalypse Striker, then it should technically be able to clear this in a very decent time frame. And judging by the DPS that I'm currently doing, it will be clearing this very quickly. So what do you get from using the Oracle 3 in PvE? Now, you definitely will not have the siege mode on this ship, which is to be expected. However, you have a lot more maneuverability, you have a lot more speed, and this makes this boat, I would say, safer to use in low sec, because an Apocalypse Striker is a battleship. It's slow, it's big, easy to scan, and big slow ships that are easy to scan are easy to kill. Now the thing about smaller ships is that they're fast. They can orbit, they can maneuver around, and they can basically position themselves in such a way that it's basically impossible to catch them. So that's the idea and trick that you can use with the Oracle. Basically, you have about the same DPS as the Apocalypse Striker, you have a very decent speed output of 2.8 kilometers per second, and at this range you can easily use the micro warp drive constantly while orbiting, or basically manually orbiting around the mission in such a way that it's basically impossible to reach you. And this is something that the Apocalypse Striker can't really do, because the Apocalypse Striker is slow and it can't really move much in the siege mode, so it's basically a big sitting target. Now with the assault battlecruisers, they have that advantage of having battleship level DPS, and they also can have cruiser level speed. So that's basically the plus side of the Oracle, or the plus side of basically in any other assault battlecruiser. Now the downside is probably the lower DPS. You don't have a siege mode, so you can't add plus 100% extra damage on your lasers. So that's basically the only downside. For a high sec, you don't really need a lot of safety, because in high sec there is no PvP, but for low sec the assault battlecruisers can be very useful, and if you ask me, they can easily outperform some of the other battleships, especially if we consider the fact that it's much more safer to fly these ships. And this is not only bound to the Oracle 3, the Oracle 2 and the Oracle 3 are actually almost the same ship. There is, I think, like 1% difference in the damage output in the skills or something like that. So you can do the same trick with the Oracle 2, and the Oracle 2 with its price tag is a much better time, or should I say a much better easy investment than buying a tier 10 battleship, because it's much cheaper and it can have about the same DPS. Again, there's, I think, a very little difference in the skills, and since I don't like to make assumptions here, I'll quickly take a look on the ship stats while I record this, in the background of course. So Battlecruiser, assault battlecruisers, or yeah, assault battlecruisers, Oracle 3. So plus 6% large laser damage and minus 10% large laser capacity unit on the Oracle 2. It's plus 5% large laser damage and minus 10% capacity unit, so plus 1% extra damage, and both of them have about the same threat levels. And the Oracle 2 costs 289 million, Oracle 3 costs 1.1 billion, which is a big price difference for 1% in skills. However, let's take a look at the Apocalypse Striker, because that's the ship that I compare them to, and the Apocalypse Striker costs 1.6 billion. So for 280 million you can get a ship that has about the same DPS as a tier 10 ship that costs like 10 times more. And I think that's a very good alternative. I guess a cheaper alternative if you don't have ISK to get the Apocalypse Tracker. The Oracle 2 can be a nice skipping stone to help you obtain the ISK, to later on buy the Apocalypse Tracker, or to later on buy the Oracle 3. Although, if you already have the Oracle 3, then if you already have the Oracle 2, I'm not really sure if it will be worth to get the Oracle 3, because after all they're about the same ship. So the build that you see on the Oracle 3 here can be applied to the Oracle 2 as well. The only difference might be the little power difference and the little damage bonus that we get from the Oracle 3, but in general, when we look at both ships, they are about the same, which is very interesting. Perhaps the tier 10 Battlecruisers will be changed, will be buffed. I can definitely see that happening, and if that happens, then the Oracle 3 is going to be a better competitor to some of the other battleships. I think the Oracle 2 and 3 can actually clear missions in a much better way than some of the other tier 10 and even faction battleships, because of how lasers work. And there's also the trick where you can basically bait in a mission, a sniper bait. You sit in a mission aligned at 200 plus kilometers from the center, and when someone warps in, you have basically maximum targeting on the ship with targeting rigs. When someone lands, you immediately spam the lock-on target. You immediately prepare the guns, the lasers, and by the time the target does reach you, the target is dead. So the Oracle 3 can do the sniper bait thing, can also work inside of a scout or a cruiser. Normally, basically, you warp to a scout in room 2 or 3, you burn to 200 kilometers from the warping location, and you sit and wait for targets to warp in. It's a very nice tactic, very good PvP tactic and idea. So the Sniper Oracle isn't really only useful for PvE. It has very good PvP applications as well. So all these ideas and builds that I talked about here are builds that I know players use, builds that my friends use, builds that I come up with, and all that basically combined into one video, and I try to cover most of them. Now, the only downside would be if you get caught up close with his Stratios. That's going to be a problem. Always be wary of Stratios cloaky ships. So one thing that you can do when you're baiting in low sec, you can place boxes around the warping location inside of room 2 or 3 in Inquisitor or Scout anomaly. That way, when someone warps in cloaked, the boxes decloak them and you can shoot them, and basically no one can sneak up to you. Now, it's much more difficult in a mission, because then they can do the double warp trick towards you, and basically a Stratios will be able to tackle you up close with that trick. So even if you're baiting as a sniper, make sure that you're moving around. Never be fully stationary. Only be stationary, or if you have to be stationary, when a target pops in, when you have to shoot, to make sure that you hit the target. But while waiting for a target, I recommend that you always move, because cloaky Stratios tackles are everywhere, and they are very sneaky. They can sneak up to your ship, decloak, and basically kill you before you even notice what's happening. One way to counter that is by moving and by placing boxes at the warping location. Basically, doesn't have to be a million boxes, like 10 boxes. I think it's more than enough. So when they warp in, they get decloaked. After all, there's also a lot of other objects around the warping location, so it's already very difficult to get inside of the Inquisitor or Scout cloaked. But just to make sure that they're not going to be able to warp in cloaked, make sure if you're baiting with a sniper ship, leave some boxes around the warping location. That way, when someone warps in, they are going to be decloaked and you can kill them. Now,
ships detected.
I had a lot of players tell me how their sniper oracle has killed faction cruisers in couple hits, and that's a fact because these ships have enormous alpha damage. A sniper oracle and basically any other sniper assault battlecruisers, assault battlecruiser has enough alpha to 1 or 2 hit most ships. So you can easily defend yourself against a interceptor that warped in at 0 or close at 0 because you're going to have range and distance. That advantage is always there for snipers. With a sniper, never let anything get close to you. Range is key, range is life, and if you don't have a lot of range between yourself and your target, then you might be in trouble because of the tracking. Snipers don't have a lot of tracking, although they have enormous range and take that as an advantage. Now, so far it does do enormous alpha damage as expected. The pulse crystal is definitely going to be a lot more useful, although the focus crystal can also be very useful because in a mission, let's say in a low sec mission, you will be fully charged. So when a hunter comes in to try and catch you, they will be faced with your full DPS potential, and that's where the oracle becomes very dangerous. I noticed a lot of pirates don't really pay much attention to that. They warp at 0 and they burn towards you in a 90-degree angle, basically in a straight line towards you, and that makes them a very, very easy kill. There is a lot of ways how to kill the pirates in low sec, and most of the pirates that I see don't really do a lot of tactical approaches. They don't really do a lot of planning ahead. So a skilled mission runner can easily kill them, and I did watch a lot of other pirates basically fail to engage a target because they get hit once or twice and they basically warp out. That's how we usually miss targets when there is multiple pirates in a system, and when there is a juicy battleship lurking there. When the pirate tries to engage them, they either chase them away or they get hit and they warp out, and that basically ruins the hunt. But you know, it's a good thing to know that mission runners are fighting back. And one of my missions, one of my goals, is to help out mission runners to defend themselves against the pirates in a much more efficient and better way. That's why I show you all these builds, all these tactics. That's why I unveil some secrets that other pirates will never tell you. I mean, I myself, I hunt ships every day, and I'm very happy to see the missioners play a lot better. I noticed the missioners are really starting to play much better than before. They became much more difficult targets to catch. People are now using smaller ships a lot more often in low sec, which again by default means they're going to be a lot more difficult to catch. And I guess I was right when I said that eventually things will change, and now it's becoming a real challenge to catch ships because everyone is orbiting at some weird orbits where is no warp in. Everyone is using some very nice ships with very good speed and things like that. And you know, other pirates would complain that they can't kill anything. Well, in my case, I'm a pirate, and I'm very happy and very glad that the mission runners are now using much better tactics, and very glad that they're actually surviving a lot more than they used to. I remember back a couple months ago, everyone would just land with a battleship at 100 and they wouldn't even align. They do that even now, but that became very rare. So most of them are aligned, most of them are moving, most of them are are in a very interesting orbit, and I am happy to say, but I'm very glad to say that the tactics and ideas that I was talking about for the last 2 years are slowly being applied by more and more players, and by default they became much more difficult to catch. So yeah, the Oracle 3 and the Oracle 2, fantastic boats. This ship cleared this mission really quickly, and definitely a good competitor to some of the other PvE ships. You can basically run this ship like the Apocalypse Tracker in high sec if you like. It will work in a same or similar way, and I'm very glad that that's the case. Is there room for improvements on the skill per level stats? Yes, there is. There is a little difference between the tier 2 and between the Oracle 2 and Oracle 3. So I definitely expect to see these ships buffed in the near future, and I also expect their price to go up when that happens. But in any case, the Oracle 2 and Oracle 3, in this case the Oracle 3 is a fantastic boat. I really like this ship. It's one of the best looking boats in the game. The Oracle's hull is definitely very pretty, and this awesome looking nanocore is making the ship look even better. So with that being said, hope that you enjoyed, hope that I could help you at building your own ship, or at least I hope that I could help you at inspiring you to build your own Oracle 3 or Oracle 2 build. As always, I love you all. If you would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and I'll see you next time.